Welcome to the March 23rd meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District School Board. Superintendent, take the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Huey?
Here.
Ms. Larrett? Here. Ms. Lofthouse? Here. Mr. Reed?
Here.
All are accounted for. Thank you.
All right, we will be going into closed session on subject matter related to student matters, employer-employee relations, conference with legal counsel regarding litigation, conference with real property negotiators, in particular related to Alder Creek Elementary School, as well as personnel matters. I don't see any members of the public looking to speak. Is there anybody online?
No, Ms. Reed.
Okay. Then we will be recessing to closed session, and we will be back at 6 o'clock sharp. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to the March 23rd meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District School Board. Please stand for the posting of the colors and the Pledge of Allegiance, which is being led tonight by the Sacramento chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution.
Color guard, carry arms. Time, mark. Left. Forward, march. Color guard, halt, left, face. Present, arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Flag bearers, prepare to post colors. Pose. Color guard, left, face. Forward, march. Halt.
Yeah, actually, we're going to take a quick picture, and then we'll continue with the meeting.
Where would you like us?
May need to get y'all moved in a little bit closer, so perhaps, I might be able to get this. One moment. Okay. All right, I think we got it right here. Okay, if you don't mind looking up here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
So, my name is Don Littlefield. I am here with the color guard, but we also have a life certificate made out to the Folsom, Cordova Unified School District that I'd like to present to you, President. Thank you very much. And sure. We're celebrating 3 years away from the nation's independence. So we have an American 250 coin. We're the board members, so how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
7.
We did it. So you just go along. I'll be faster for you if I give them to you. You got 4 there? Yes. There are 4 there. Planning. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Back to the agenda. Let's see. A broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. The meeting is being live streamed on the district's YouTube channel. Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board Policy 1313 promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among employees, parents, and the public. We will treat staff, parents, and members of the public with respect and expect the same in return. If any member of the public uses obscenities or communicates in a demanding, loud, insulting, and/or demeaning manner, the board will calmly and politely admonish the person to communicate civilly. Public comments during board meetings are an important component of public engagement and transparency. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their speaking time to another member of the public. All written comments submitted by 3 p.m. today to the board have been read. Per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into a two-way discussion on any matter not on the agenda. At the direction of the board, the superintendent will call roll, acknowledging the board received all electronic comments submitted as it pertains to today's board meeting. Superintendent, please call the roll.
Yes. Ms. Perez?
Here.
Ms. Srivastava?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Huey?
Here.
Ms. Larrett?
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
All are accounted for. Thank you.
All right, reporting out of closed session, superintendent.
No action, but the board gave direction to staff regarding the purchase and sales agreement of Alder Creek Elementary.
All right. Agenda item 6, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Srivastava. Superintendent, please take the roll.
Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Huey?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right, agenda item 7, special presentations. First one is students. Superintendent.
Yes, I'm very excited tonight to have two student presentations. The first one is a recognition, continued recognition of Music Appreciation Month and introducing the New Mills Drumline led by Drumline Director Jimmy Adams. And he is going to be honoring us tonight and presenting to the audience and the board the Mills Drumline. So welcome, Mr. Adams.
might be getting spoiled with this music. Two meetings in a row. I love it. Second item.
Yes, well, again, I want to thank our new drumline director, Jimmy Adams, and the work of our students and those families that came and joined us tonight, too. We're just incredibly privileged to have that focus and the support over at Mills Middle School. So with that, I'll go on to our second student recognition. I'm going to ask Dr. Peace to come to the podium, but March is also a celebration of social emotional learning and wellness month, and we do an art contest that actually, this is our second year doing that. Had a lot of student participation last year and even more so this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Peace to share some of the highlights and our winners for the school district.
Good evening, Dr. Kaligian, Board President Reed, and members of the board. I just want to acknowledge Mills for that amazing performance. That's a tough act to follow, but this is also another reason to celebrate. So tonight we're celebrating over 200 submissions and 13 winners of the second annual SEL art contest. International SEL Day is an opportunity to collectively spread the word about the importance and impact of social emotional learning. Studies show that SEL improves well-being and academic outcomes, builds a positive school climate, and provides children with the necessary skills to excel in today's workforce. This year's theme was uplifting hearts and connecting minds. The winners of this year's contest demonstrated their ability to create an original piece that fits the theme. A winner was selected for each grade level that participated. So without further ado, I would like to celebrate this year's winners. And I want to add that on the back tables, you can actually see the pieces that were selected this year. So for preschool, we have Brody Kuhn. Come on up. Kindergarten, Viadat Bhat from Empire Oaks. And if you all could. All right, for first grade from Mangini Ranch, I have Shresti Vendashi. Second grade, I have Ashvi Mishra from Empire Oaks Elementary. For third grade, we have a two-time winner, Shania Gupta from Mangini Ranch. Fourth grade, Ayandri Guha from Theodore Judah Elementary. Fifth grade, Maha Manshi from Empire Oaks Elementary. Sixth grade, Anna Hong from Innovations Academy. Seventh grade, Anisha Gilra from Sutter Middle School. Eighth grade, Angelina Koo from Folsom Middle School. Ninth grade, Julie Hong from Innovations Academy. 10th grade, Ritu Shiranhari, I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly, from Vista Del Lago High School. And another two-time winner for 11th grade, Natalie Elliott Cisneros from Folsom High School. So congratulations to all of you. There were hundreds of people who voted for you, so everyone got to come and see your artwork, so congratulations. And now I would like for all of us to take a picture, so get really tight like you like each other, and then us adults, we're gonna come in and get a picture with you as well.
straight, look straight.
Look here, honey. Ashri, look here.
Out of the way so parents can take a picture. And I promise you, we will take as long as you need.
Just keep looking in the front, okay?
Where is Dr. Your certificate is right here. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay. Hold on, friends. All right, so if you can show me your certificate. Good job.
Ashri, smile. Look here.
Z2, look straight.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna see right here. Okay, I'm gonna count to 3 and look over here at my camera and smile.
Look here.
1, 2, 3.
And smile.
1, 2, 3. And now, parents. Okay.
Thank you.
Before we go, I wanted to just show a mini presentation that we put together and also recognize the MAC Center for their generous donation, and also Board Member Clark for his donations for the prizes as well. So, Rochelle? So again, I want to thank our partners. I would like to thank our educational partners who helped make this event possible. Again, Board Member Clark and Ms. Cheryl Gleason, but then also recognize all the teachers, parents, and all the student participants. So thank you so much.
All right. No staff presentation? then?
Correct.
Okay. All right, that takes us to agenda item 8, which is public comment. This is the point in the agenda that any member of the public who wishes to make a comment that's on an item that's not on the agenda, this is the opportunity to make that comment. If you are here to speak on an agenda item, there will be a public comment for each agenda item. So I don't see any cards.
Oh, yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, here we are. Thank you. All right, first public comment will be Blanca Matthews. Welcome.
Hello. My comment is to raise awareness to the board and ask you guys to get involved in the legislature that's being open right now. I would ask that you support Bill AB 9584, and that is about financial literacy and education. I think that's important. Opposition to AB 659, which is called the Cancer Prevention Act. In that bill, I mean, it sounds great, like who doesn't want to prevent cancer, right? But it was mandating a vaccine for kids to go past 8th grade against the HPV. It was just amended, I think, last night or 2 nights ago. And they removed it. They changed the language, but now it's going to be required for certain schools, universities here in California. And yeah, I'm looking for you guys to either personally send in a letter of opposition or as a board, or just remove the mandate of the vaccine. HPV is not a communicable disease. It's a sexually transmitted disease. So you can't just sit in a classroom and just get this virus. Another one is opposition to ACA 9. That's Alpha Charlie Alpha 9. That one is about superintendent of public instruction not to be voted in. So it's going to be appointed by the governor. From my understanding, it's a non-partisan, or I don't remember the term, but it's not supposed to be Democrat or Republican. It's supposed to just be for education. And if it's appointed by a governor, I feel like it could be, you know, Democrat or Republican, whatever the governor wants to choose. And I don't like that. So hopefully you guys will look into that one. And then oppose AB 1078. That is taking away local control to the boards of curriculum. So that what that's saying is that materials, if they're going to be removed, I don't remember if added also, but I could email it to you if you have questions about that. I don't feel that it's appropriate for the California legislature to say the curriculums that we're going to have. Each different board is different across all California. So I don't think the legislatures are in touch with our community like you guys are. You guys are for families, for students, and you're just more connected. So the local control is really important. And that's it. If you guys have questions, I know you can't comment about it because it's not on the agenda, but I'll be more than happy to email you guys more information if you need it. And I can communicate with Angela. I know she's the communication person at FCUSD. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dan McCrossen. Welcome.
Good evening. With all this positivity, I'm hesitant to bring these issues to the board, but I do want to show you my emoji that I wear. This is how we feel about our students. We love our students. And so I'm the music director at Mitchell Middle School, and I'm the FCEA 6-8 member at large. I've been asked here to speak on behalf of teachers who are struggling in the classroom every single day. I've spoken with teachers, several teachers, and I hear stories about kids disrobing and throwing socks and clothing at other students, students using racial slurs, sexual insults, threats, profanity, students walking around the classroom, throwing books, pencils, garbage, whatever they can get their hands on, students leaving the classroom, wandering around campus with the campus monitor, because the campus monitor follows them, but they can't really make them go into classroom. So what do? We suspend students, but then we're told you got to keep your suspensions down. So we contact administration. They're often already handling other student behaviors. We also call parents. We say, hey, what can we do? And the parent honestly says to us, I don't know what to do. What do we do? I know restorative practices are being put into place, but until we're all trained in those practices, what are we to do? I hope you will consider the following questions that I've heard from teachers. What do we do when a student's behavior escalates and affects learning in the classroom? What do we do? Whom do we call when the student who is in meltdown mode? And where do we keep other students safe? Why are we being blamed for not de-escalating a student when we have not been properly trained? Why do we get a visit from the safety administrator when we suspend a student for threatening or doing harm after we've contacted the principal multiple times? How do we keep ourselves safe when a student is being physical with us or threatening others? Where are the support systems? And by that I mean behaviorists, mental specialists, restorative practices for each and every classroom. Why are students with trauma being placed into high student-teacher ratio classrooms? Who's going to help us with the trauma we teachers have experienced this year? Why is administration not reporting physical attacks we have experienced to the police as required by law? Why is the student placed back into the same school environment they were removed from when a serious action takes place? Why does there seem to be no consequence for harmful, disruptive, and disrespectful behavior? These are the questions we are asking, and we are asking for your support with student behavior. We're asking to be trained in best practices to improve student behavior, and we're asking to be valued so that we can continue to provide the best education to the valued students that we love so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, looks like the next speakers are Janine Hanahan and Sandra Wara. Welcome.
Thank you for having us this evening. Good evening, board members and Dr. Kaligian. My name is Janine Hanrahan, and I am here with Sandra Wara, and we are counselors from Sutter Middle School. I'm in my 21st year at Sutter, and Sandra is in her 24th year as a counselor and teacher at Sutter. Somehow she's able to retire, but I guess she does have about 35 years. Tonight, we're here just to give you an insight into our role as counselors and give you just the latest at Sutter Middle School.
So just a little bit of background. Our enrollment at Sutter Middle School is 1579. Janine and I are the two full-time counselors. So I have A through K and she has L through Z. And then we do have a .4 counselor that is part-time. So our ratios are over 700 to 1. While we appreciate the .4 counselor, it's really challenging to be able to collaborate and to give her any part of the alphabet. So that's why our ratios are that amount. We look forward to an increase in counseling support next year. Our duties as a counselor have increased, as you all know, greatly over the years in the areas of academics, social, and mental health. The mental health needs of our students are greater than we have ever seen in our tenure. Weekly, along with our MHS, we are supporting the students, but at the same time, assessing them as well. We do our best that we can with that ratio to meet their needs of our students and our families. But it's an exciting time of the year for us and for families because registration is in swing. So we are working closely with elementary schools to make it an easy transition for our 5th graders to middle school. And then our current students have chosen their electives, and our 8th graders have met a couple weeks ago with Vista Del Lago and Folsom High School. So we are putting right now a tremendous amount of time into our master schedule so that we are able to meet the needs of our families.
As counselors, we just really enjoy being a part of programs, school-wide programs that foster positive connections at Sutter. And so we are a part of our web program, which some of you know, Where Everyone Belongs, to really help with the transition of our 6th grade students. We really enjoy supporting our leadership. They helped us welcome an additional 84 students to our site this year, new families. Also things like our Unplugged Challenge we participate in to get students off their phones. And I know our time is almost up. Another thing that we have coming up is a career day. We're preparing for that and we're looking for presenters if any of you are interested. So thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards. Anybody online? Okay. Then we will move on to reports of district organizations. And we'll start with the Student Advisory Board.
There is no report to be made other than tomorrow SAB applications will be released, so we are looking forward to all students applying. Thank you.
Next, California School Employees Association. Welcome.
Hello. Nothing to report at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Folsom Cordova Education Association.
We do have something to report. I'm Tracy Suter. Angelica and Deb and everyone else had a lot going on, so you got me. I am here to introduce our presentation on behalf of our counselors. As a classroom teacher, I can tell you that the mental health issues are all over the place and of great concern. And what I find I need to do as a teacher is call the two people who are about to present to you, because they're my go-to for helping my students achieve what I want them to achieve mathematically, but also help them be what they need to be in order to learn. They've also offered some support to the adults on campus, including myself as well. So I'd like to welcome Debbie Burns and Christine Clanley, two of my favorite humans, to talk on behalf of all of the district counselors to let you know what they're seeing, what they're experiencing from their end.
Thank you, Tracy. Good evening. Thank you for having us. We'd like to thank Dr. Collegian, President Reed, board trustees, the Folsom Cordova leadership, the Folsom Cordova community, and of course, our wonderful counselors who are here tonight in person and virtually as well. Again, I'm Debbie Burns, and this is Christine Clineley. We've been counselors in the district for 18 and 22 years, and both have had the opportunity at working at multiple sites. Tonight, we are representing all counselors within our district, although currently we are both at Vista Del Lago. Yes, that's right. Okay. Folsom Cordova's goal for our students is to have their mental and academic needs met, so each child has the ability to learn and grow, and also to ensure access and equity for all of our students. Tonight, our mission is to provide you with information on the current state of counseling and what is needed to best meet that goal. Today, many of our counselors within the county and our district attended the first of a 2-day conference provided by SCOE. It was refreshing to hear and feel the value of our profession and the support for an increase in counselors to each school across the nation. It was, with today's youth losing the human connection, which is critical to their development and future, we need counseling more than ever. One way to make that shift happen for our students is to reduce the student to counselor ratios. The American School Counselor Association recommends 250 to 1. Currently, our counselors do not have ratios in our contract, but the board has previously recommended for middle schools 550 to 1 and for high schools 500 to 1. Currently, Folsom Cordova does not have enough counselors hired, and also those ratios cannot serve our students' needs. This slide up on the screen right here, and I believe you all have in front of you, is a comparison of high schools across districts from 2021 to 2022. As you can see, Folsom Cordova is not only in the top 5, but has the second highest student to counselor ratio at 490, which is not only above the ASCA recommendation of 250 to 1, but also the national average of 408 to 1. Our next slide is of middle schools, again comparing districts from 2021 to 2022. The same is true for our middle schools. Folsom Cordova is in the top 5 for highest student to counselor ratio, again, higher than the ASCA recommendations and the national average at 456. For our continuation and our special schools, the ratios appear in the middle at 137, but it's really important to note that our alternative sites are not at full capacity. This current slide is specific to Folsom Cordova. As you can see, all of the comprehensive schools within our district are above the recommendation, again, of ASCA and the national average, with the exception of our alt eds and schools that have additional funding. Without the Title I funds that are also provided to assist to hire counselors, their ratios would be much higher. In addition, the number of students who enroll and disenroll at Cordova, Mitchell, and Mills throughout the year is significant. This means the number of student contacts throughout the year is much higher than the number reflected in the chart. As previously stated, we started the school year with at least 2 of our schools being down counselors. Cordova High has recently come at full capacity, but Folsom Lake High School is still down FTE. In both cases, our current counselors have had to take on those additional students to meet their needs.
Okay. As a district, one of our primary goals is to make sure that students' academic and mental health is one of our top priorities. And as counselors, as Debbie has mentioned, and you've heard from counselors throughout the year, we have all seen an increased need in all of the areas that are listed below over the years, especially after the return of in-person learning and the pandemic. Our credential allows us to provide services throughout the school year, not only for academic needs, but for social and emotional needs of our students as well. Here's just a few highlights listed of some of the things that we do on a daily basis to work with our students and support them. We help students with course selection and registration. We monitor grade progress, as well as review transcripts to make sure students are on track for graduation. We promote academic success, equity, and access for every student on campus. And we also provide college and career planning for our students as well. We participate in as team members in 504 and IEP meetings, and we schedule and guide the site student study team meetings on our campuses. For mental health, we provide one-on-one mental health support to our students, and we connect students and families with community resources. Along with that, we always collaborate with parents, teachers, and support staff, along with our administration, to meet the needs of our students on campus. This graph shows that FCE member salaries account for 36.4% of the district expenditures for this year. And as you can see, it's a downward trend. In 2017-18, the district certificated bargaining unit counted for 41.78% of expenditures. And again, this year, that number is down to 36.4%. This reduction has significantly impacted our students and the programs that we can offer them. We believe there needs to be a higher investment in our students. By reversing the downward spending trend, our district can hire counselors to meet the students' academic, mental, and social and emotional needs. And remember that investing in counselors is ensuring a bright future for citizens of today and tomorrow. In order to properly serve our students by being able to provide more individualized support in their academic, career, and social emotional needs, we ask that our ratios be reduced to the following. Comprehensive high schools have a 375-to-1 student counselor ratio, and comprehensive middle schools have a 400-to-1 student counselor ratio. Along with that, we ask that we have caseload overage compensation, where competitive compensation for student counselor ratio overages is provided, and this would be similar to what teachers are given when assigned an additional section above their contract maximum. Thank you again for allowing us this opportunity, and we appreciate the partnership and support in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Folsom Cordova Leadership Association.
Good evening, President Reed and Dr. Kaligi, and I'm Dana Kerrigan, Principal President of Mills Middle School, and I'm here tonight for President Strawn, who's at a conference, so I'm filling in for her. We are now officially in hiring season, and tonight I'd like to share how our teachers and our HR team are recruiting for FCUSD. Currently, we have a team down in Long Beach at the California Association for Bilingual Education Conference, or CABE. We've also had teams attend hiring affairs at CSU Chico, CSU Fullerton, CSU Long Beach, CSU Northridge, CSU Sacramento, and just this week, Mr. Don Ogden was in Texas at Wiley College, a historically Black college. During each hiring fair, the FCUSD booth is a popular one, and our team enthusiastically shares how rewarding it is to be part of Team FCUSD. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have the District English Learner Advisory Committee.
Good evening, everybody. Elena Cabrera, good evening, Dr. Kaligian, our superintendent, President Board Reed, members of the board, and my esteemed colleagues. I recall I definitely stumbled on that recently, so I'm trying to make up for that. But it's great to see you again. I do have a brief report. As we are turning the corner towards the finish of this school year, I want to do a little bit of a recap of through DLAC and the focus on fostering connections in our parent summits. As you recall, in October, we had fostering connections through the community schools. We had an opportunity to gather input from our parents in the community. They also engaged in an activity, an exercise, if you will, in becoming comfortable and familiar with the many budgets in our district and speaking about them through the people and the services that they bring to our students in our schools. And the next parent summit this year that fostered connections was connections to our data and our dashboard, our data walk with our parents on in February. And so we'll finish the year in our third parent summit in April with fostering connections through the many services that our schools already provide. So we're going to be highlighting our college and career readiness programs that we have that really do serve from cradle to career. We're going to highlight the services that we have in place with CTE. We're also going to be talking about our A through G or college career readiness. We're going to have one of our counselors there provide information to our parents. And then we're also going to be sharing our social emotional supports, the many positive supports that we have in place in our classrooms with our teachers and our students. So while there's much to do, there's much to celebrate too. So please join us on April 25th. It's a Tuesday night from 5 to 7. It'll be at Rancho Cordova and at our third of 3 Fostering Connections Parent Summit. That's our report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to agenda item 10, agenda consent. I understand we're pulling an item. Is that correct, Superintendent?
Yes, I believe item L, which is the instructional calendar for 23-24.
All right. With any other items that folks want to remove from the consent agenda? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item L? Motion by Mr. Clark.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Lofthouse. Superintendent, take the roll.
Yes, Ms. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Hui.
Aye.
Ms. Larrett.
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Aye.
Mr. Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
And I understand we have some introductions. Is that correct?
Were we going to go
Or
back to
are we, my misunderstanding, I thought we were pulling it for the day, for a future meeting, or is this,
Oh.
are we considering?
I believe so.
Okay, all right,
I think it was just for an explanation.
all right,
Yes.
my misunderstanding. Item L, instructional calendar, Superintendent.
Okay, and this item is coming back to the board after discussion at the last board meeting about making some, couple of changes to the ratified calendar that the board had reviewed and approved earlier in the year. And I'm going to ask Mr. Ogden to share a little bit about what calendar we have on the agenda for, just for clarity purposes and transparency so our public knows. Mr. Ogden, thank you for joining us virtually.
Thank you. As was mentioned, we're recruiting today, and so I'm not joining you in person. We have a calendar that's adopted for the 23-24 school year. And we were working with the bargaining team in our last negotiating session. One of the things that came up was we were reviewing our calendar this year, and we had put in place a professional development day in April, the Monday after spring break. And we're finding that not a lot of staff are taking advantage of that professional development day. So in our conversation, we discussed, well, what if we had an October 9th professional development day in the 23-24 school year? And to do so, what we could do is we could move the Christmas holiday and or the winter break. And in doing so, that would balance the calendar and align our winter break with some of the other districts where some of our families have either spouses or children that attend. We brought that to the board at our last meeting. In our last meeting, the board said that they liked the idea of the October 9th PD day. However, moving that winter break on this time frame is problematic for many people. So I went back and talked to the bargaining unit about it, because the board has the right to create an instructional calendar, and then we have a responsibility to go bargain the impacts and effects of that new calendar. So we have a current calendar. If we're going to change the date to October 9th, we would have to bargain the impacts and effects of that, which would be one of a couple of options. One would be to have that April travel day be a instructional day. One would be to have the last day of school be one day later, so we could open up a day for a PD day on October 9th. Or one option would be to look at the winter break and, like I had shown the board at the last meeting, move the winter break by a week, which would move a 5-day vacation to a 4-day holiday on the day following January 1st. So that gets you that extra day and has the same start date and still has a travel day. So there's a couple of ways to solve this. And so if the board were to change the instructional calendar, then the district has a responsibility to bargain the impacts and effects of that. So that's what I'm bringing back to the board. And I did share with the board last time that I would talk to the bargaining unit about this. And our president did poll the teachers, and there was not a unanimous decision that, there's a lot of support on any of those three decisions that I shared earlier. So if there's no decision, then we just stick with the current calendar that we have. And the current calendar that we have, instructional and work calendar, currently does not have a professional development day in August.
Questions on the board?
Just to clarify what a yes vote on this would mean tonight. We currently have a calendar that was approved and ratified. If we vote yes on this calendar tonight, the board will be saying that we would like the April 1st PD day to move to October 9th. And if it is a yes vote from the board, then it goes to the bargaining table.
Correct. We would have to bargain the impacts and effects of the board's decision to change the instructional calendar.
Okay.
And so then I would work with the bargaining units on their work calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Ogden.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Ogden, to clarify, if it is not bargained or it is not agreed upon in bargaining, it sticks with the original calendar.
Correct. We already have a ratified calendar. It's ratified by the board as well as both bargaining units. So we do have an existing calendar for 23-24. What we were considering here is the need for a professional development day in October. And in order to make that happen, we would have to go back to the table and renegotiate that calendar.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I guess since we pulled it, is there any comments from the public on this item? No. All right. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll motion that we approve item L.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Hui. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Lorette. Superintendent, take the roll.
Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Shrivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, now introductions.
Yes, thank you. So in the consent agenda, a couple of the actions that were approved by the board was the approval of the Special Education Community Advisory Committee. And I want to personally thank them for their ongoing support of our Enrichment Art Show that we hold here, and we actually held it here at the district last night, and you still see some of this wonderful artwork around the room. And if you haven't had a chance to peek at that artwork, please do so. But we thank our CAC members, which are made up of our parents, community members, and staff. We do have a member from CAC with us tonight, and that's Nicole McCarthy. So Nicole, thank you and welcome. And then the second introduction goes with our personnel action form, and we have 3 administrators that were approved for 3 of our middle schools, and it's my pleasure to introduce those 3. And the first one we're going to introduce is virtually, and that is Mr. Ian Shipley. Folsom Cordova is pleased to announce Ian Shipley as the new assistant principal for Mitchell Middle School for the upcoming school year. He is joining us from Houston, and where he has been an assistant principal at the intermediate, middle, and high school levels. Before he became a campus administrator, he was a high school social studies teacher in Houston. As a proud native of California, he is very excited to return to the Golden State and is grateful for the opportunity to join Team FCUSD. So congratulations and welcome, Mr. Shipley.
Thank you so much. It's amazing to be here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in person next time.
Likewise.
Okay. Second, we're very pleased and excited to announce Brooke Hoppy. She will become the new assistant principal for Mills Middle School this upcoming school year. Ms. Hoppy has, yay. And you can come to the podium while I continue to introduce you. Brooke has over 17 years in education. She joined FCUSD in 2014 as a high school English teacher. Currently, she serves Mills Middle School as an academic support coach and site administrative designee, where she is instrumental in providing support for staff professional development in the areas of instruction, intervention, cultural responsiveness, and data analysis. Described as courageous and compassionate, Ms. Hoppy holds an uncompromising belief that all students are deserving and capable of success. Congratulations, Brooke.
Thank you. That was a very nice introduction. I'm very excited, and I'm really looking forward to this new opportunity and responsibility that I have to Mills.
Thank you very much, and congratulations again. And I'm also very honored to welcome Mr. Brian Zahn as the newest assistant principal for Sutter Middle School. And Brian has over 23 years of experience in education. Mr. Zahn is a familiar face in our district, having served the last 9 years as an administrator for Folsom Cordova Unified School District at secondary schools at both Folsom and Rancho Cordova. He has built strong relationships with students and families, and in the words of his colleagues, he has a unique talent for motivating students and building rapport. His dedication to academics extends to the support of athletics. While not on campus, you can find him coaching youth soccer and basketball. Welcome, Mr. Zahn, and congratulations.
Dr. Koligian, and to the cabinet and to President Reed and the board, thank you very much for this opportunity. Looking very forward to the upcoming year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. That takes us to agenda item 11, public hearing. So I guess I need to gavel into the public hearing. This is a public hearing, school site selection standards, Alder Creek Elementary School. Superintendent.
Yes, this public hearing is a requirement of Ed Code. It requires the board to hold this public hearing before they pass a resolution regarding the sustainability of the new school site for Alder Creek Elementary to be used as a school site. So opportunity for the public to share any feedback before the next item.
Is there any public comments? All right. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. And we're back to agenda item 12, Discussion action, adopt resolution number 03-23-23-35, Alder Creek Elementary School site acquisition determinations and findings. Superintendent.
Yes, after opening and closing the public hearing, the Ed Code also requires that the board make certain findings regarding the suitability of the site for the use of a school for Alder Creek Elementary. The findings were supported by several of the different outside agencies that came in and did assessments of the land itself. And Mr. Washburn can answer any specific questions on any of those findings. If not, there's a resolution that the board would approve.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Or not questions, comments, excuse me. Online? All right, back to the board. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Srivastava. Superintendent.
Yes, Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
And Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Item 13, discussion, process of district reorganization. Superintendent.
Yes, this item is coming to the board as a discussion item based on a request from the January 19th board meeting to ask staff to bring back information on the cost and process of completing a study on the ability to reorganize Folsom Cordova into two separate districts based on the communities of Rancho Cordova and Folsom. So we have a consultant from School Services of California, Ms. Brianna Garcia. We welcome you here and thank you for joining us. She has a presentation about the process, the criteria, and the scope of what that feasibility study would look at. And then following Ms. Garcia will be Mr. Martin to talk about the history of this process in our district. So welcome, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you, Superintendent, Board President and board members, and also staff. Thank you very much for having me this evening. I'd like to just walk you through the process of what a school district would need to do in order to go through a district reorganization, just the general process in general, and what the approvals, et cetera, are that you would need in order to move forward. So this first slide just shows you that beginning with Education Code Section 35-500, the code is very clear with regards to what has to happen in order for a district reorganization to move forward. So the code section very clearly specifies the duties and responsibility of the county committee on district reorganization, which is the body that would actually hear and determine whether or not the reorganization would move forward. It describes the overall process to initiate the district reorganization, the various types of district reorganizations, which I'll walk through as well. It prescribes the timelines for the hearings, the approvals, the votes that have to happen in order to have one move forward. It specifies the employment rights of district employees. And lastly, it lists the criteria upon which that committee of district reorganization and the state board has to evaluate any reorganization proposal in order for it to move forward eventually to the voters to approve any district reorganization. So there are a couple of basic types of reorganizations. The first is a territory transfer, and that typically happens when there is property from one school district that is going to be transferred to another school district. There are unifications with components, and that usually means that a high school is trying to unify with some of its feeder elementary or middle schools, but usually not all of those elementary or middle schools. And then there's a lapsation, which is when a school district actually is dissolved and is taken over by another school district. And that typically happens because of declining enrollment. There are thresholds that are listed into code, though there are exceptions that can be provided by the state board in order to lapse one district into another. And then the fourth type, and which is the type that Folsom Cordova would be experiencing, is the formation of a new school district, which is also considered a unification. And this is typically when an elementary or high school district wants to unify into a K through 12 school district, or as in the case of Folsom Cordova, when an existing school district is considering splitting into two or more unified school districts. So the law is clear that in order to begin a reorganization, a petition has to be submitted. And I will go into in a moment who can submit those petitions. But the petitions require really 4 basic things. You're going to have to provide a reasonable description of the territory that it's proposed to be reorganized. And so you would have to lay out what the 2 proposed new school districts would look like so that that's clear to the board and to the public. You would list the affected school districts. In your case, it's just the one because you're splitting instead of trying to form, or instead of several districts trying to form new ones. You have to list the reasons for the proposed reorganization. And then lastly, you'll be designating no more than 3 chief petitioners that'll actually sign the petition with an affidavit saying that they are the ones that are putting this forward. Though in this, potentially, depending on how this moves forward, it could be the Board of Education. Typically, when you're looking at these 3 chief petitioners, a lot of the time that's when it's public members, usually homeowners, et cetera, that are bringing this forward, and they have those listed. So with regards to unification, this type of reorganization, there's really 2 types of petitions that would be used in order to bring this forward. There are several others, but they pertain to the other types of district reorganizations like territory transfers, etc. So in this case, the first category are owners of uninhabited territory, 25% petition, or district governing boards. And so it requires that the petition be signed either by owners of uninhabited territories, which don't apply here because you are a built-out community and city. You need at least 25% of registered voters in the inhabited territory proposed to be transferred. So if it was parent, homeowners, or individuals that are bringing this forward, they'd actually have to go out and get signatures of persons within the community saying that they are supportive of this petition moving forward. You need a majority of the members of the governing boards of all affected districts. In this case, there's only 1 district, so a majority of your board. Or lastly, you need at least 8% of the registered voters who cast votes in the last gubernatorial election for a district that's over 200,000 ADA, if you're going to be splitting it apart. So that's one methodology for putting forward a petition. The other is what they call a 10% petition or a local agency. And so this requires at least 10% of registered voters of the entire school district, or at least 5% of the registered voters, again, of a school district that's over 200,000 average daily attendance, if you're going to be splitting those districts into 2 or more. Or you need a resolution that's approved by the majority of the members of a city council, a county board of supervisors, governing board of a special district, or some other local agency formation commission. So those are the 2 main ways of putting forward a petition. And these next couple of slides provide a flow chart that's put together by the California Department of Education. They actually have a school district organization handbook that puts a lot of this together and converts the education code a little bit more into English than you would normally find if you're trying to read the education code yourself. And so they put out this flow chart that I think works really well. So that 25% petition, again, you have the option of an uninhabited territory, which doesn't apply here. And so we're looking at the bottom left-hand square that I've highlighted in yellow, inhabited territory. And those are those items I mentioned with regards to 25% of the electorate or the majority of the governing board. The petition is submitted to the county superintendent, and they are going to look to ensure that the signatures are sufficient. If it's the 25%, they actually usually do some kind of sampling just to make sure that they're legitimate. Once they've determined that the petition has the appropriate number of signatures and the appropriate elements, then they will transfer that petition to the County Committee on District Reorganization and to the State Board of Education. Once that body receives that petition, they have 60 days in order to establish public hearings within the school district that's going to be in question. And that first public hearing really is to get input from the public on support or not for the district reorganization moving forward. The committee then has 120 days in order to review the 9 criteria that I'm going to show you in a couple of slides. And In some cases, there is some law that requires that the California Environmental Quality Act actually be complied with, and that organization potentially is going to end up being the lead agency for that. But if it's going to the state board, that responsibility typically moves to the state board, though I will tell you from my conversations with staff at the state board, they're going to put the onus of that right back on the local community to move that forward and to pay for that study, just FYI. Once the committee has its reviews those criteria, then they actually take a vote to determine whether or not they are going to approve or disapprove that petition for reorganization. Again, the 9 criteria that I'm going to show you, all 9, according to the Education Code, must be met in order for a petition to move forward for reorganization. If the committee decides that it approves the petition, then it's going to submit that petition, any recommendations that it has, because it can include other information that it wants to provide to the state board and any other documentation to the State Board of Education. And then the State Board of Education holds its own public hearing. Its own staff does its own analysis of the 9 criteria, and then they determine whether or not that petition is approved or not approved. I will tell you that in my experience, once it gets to the state board, it's a lengthy process. I was part of a study for another county office about 4 years ago or so, 4 or 5 years ago, and it just came up to the state board last year. So while the local process, it's closer to 8 months-ish, that state board process can take a bit of time, or it has in the past. If the State Board of Education approves the petition, then it's going to notify the county superintendent, who's going to have to call an election of the voters, and then the voters will make the ultimate decision as to whether or not they are going to approve the district reorganization. So that's the 25% petition model. The 10% petition is a little bit the same, a little bit different. The biggest difference is at the very beginning. When a 10% petition is submitted, the county committee receives that petition, and then it holds a public hearing to determine whether or not it is going to grant the petition. So it's looking at the information before it and then determining, is there enough here for us to move this forward, or should we just stop this here and now? If they decide to stop the petition, that is where that piece ends. However, if they decide, no, there's merit here, or we'd like to move it forward, then they adopt tentative recommendations. And once they do that, then the public hearings that I talked about in the previous flow chart, those public hearings are held. They will review the criteria again, that 9 criteria. They have 120 days to do that. If they determine that, yes, they are going to accept and review the petition and approve it, they do so at another public meeting, and then again, it gets submitted to the State Board of Education, and the State Board of Education goes through its process. So the biggest difference really here is at the very beginning. With the 25% petition, there's a very clear timeline from the very beginning when it's submitted, when the public hearing has to begin. With this petition, it is provided to the county committee, and there is no timeline set in statute with regards to when they have to hold that first hearing to determine whether or not they're going to move it forward or whether they are going to hold it back. All right. There is the ability, step back. I mentioned that normally these petitions go to the state board after they've been approved locally. There is an option for the approval of the county committee without it going to the state board, but it does require that there is consensus. In this case, with the school districts, you don't have multiple, so that makes that part easy, and that the 9 criteria can be met. And so those things have to happen. There has to be a public hearing with regards to that, and then they can approve or deny that petition. There's also the ability to appeal in this case. So if one of the petitioners or the community, for whatever reason, are not satisfied or are not in agreement with the ruling of the county committee, then they can appeal that, and it will then go ahead and go to the State Board of Education for their consideration. So there's the possibility of shortening the process, but if there is an appeal, it will go to the state board. Either way, ultimately, it will come back to the voters in order to hold an election for the voters to determine whether or not they want that district organization to actually move forward. So I mentioned that there are criteria that are required by law to be met. We call them the 9 statutory criteria. There's a 10th one that the state board looks at, and that's really anything that the state board wants to consider when it's making its determination. But typically at the local level, you're looking at these 9 criteria, and I will walk through each one of these and give you some information one by one on the next slides. So the very first one is an adequate number of pupils. The reorganized districts have to have a minimum number of students after the reorganization is in place. And for unified districts, that's 1,501 students enrolled in order for it to be an adequate number of pupils. Criteria 2 is community identity. So school districts are each organized on the basis of substantial community identity. It's asking that you look at where the social centers are, what the geographic proximities are, where it is that the families are, the communities, etc. It's trying to set up a place where you don't have a school district here and 30 miles, one strip of road, you have another part of the district down the way. That's not really a sense of community. Or if you had a district that was by some means separated by a large mountain range, it's hard to bridge that and actually form a community. And so it has you look at those types and other information just to see if there's really a substantial community identity. And in this case, it would be what the communities, the 2 separate communities are, and if those arguments, if that criteria can be substantially met. Number 3 is the equitable division of property and facilities. And so the intent is that with the reorganization, it's going to result in an equitable division of property and facilities between those school districts. You don't want to split the school district and you have one side of your community that has all of the school facilities except for one and ends up with all of the bond funds, while the other side of your community has one school that they have to, fit 10,000 students in. Exaggerating, of course. But you want to make sure, and what we do is we really do look at the facilities and the number of students, what's the capacity of those, and what's going to be the number of students in each one of those areas. You're going to look at how would you split the funds that are currently held by the district between the 2 communities. Some of that is going to be based on average daily attendance. Some of it might be based on square footage. There's different ways to look at all of those things. If there's bond funds, how are those going to be split up? The one sticking point potentially is if there's any community facilities districts that would cover both of the districts once they're split. Right now, there is no law and there's no precedent for splitting a community facilities district in half. And so that's something that will have to be looked at if you have those that would actually bridge the 2 sides of the districts as they would be designated. Criteria number 4 is discrimination and segregation. The idea that the reorganization will preserve each district's ability to educate students in an integrated environment and will not promote racial or ethnic discrimination or segregation. You don't want a situation where you're splitting up a district and 99% of the Caucasian students are in one district and the other district is remaining with all of the African American, Hispanic, or low socioeconomic. So those are the kinds of things that it's looking at. It's usually not that stark, but we really do look at what those percentages are and what those shifts are before and after in order to make that determination. Number 5 is no substantial increase in state costs. So any increase to the state should be insignificant and incidental to the reorganization. So the state, obviously, they have a school district in place that they're paying $10 to every year to educate students. They don't want to split this up, and now it's going to cost them $100 million to educate those same students. Some small delta there's not anything in the law or in code that says, oh, if it's 10% or 5%, there's no threshold. But it's something that we do investigate just to see what that might look like after the fact. Number 6 is a sound educational program. You want to make sure that after the reorganization, students are still going to be able to receive a sound educational program and their programs won't be significantly disrupted. And so we really would sit down and look in detail at one of the main big pictures is, test scores. Looking at the California School Dashboard and in this case, what the individual schools and how that is helping those students. We'd look at the programs that are currently available at the various school sites, what programs are available on a district-wide basis and how those would have to be split up as well. Again, just trying to ensure that once this happens, you don't have a group of students that are now without a sound educational program or some critical part of their education that they had before when it was unified or one school district, and they're losing out on that when they're split up into 2 different school districts. Number 7, no substantial increase to school facilities costs. The same idea with no substantial increase to cost to the state in general. They wouldn't want to set up a district where there are no facilities or all of the facilities are in disrepair in one district but are brand new in another. And now the state is going to have to sink dollars, or even the districts are going to have to sink dollars in, multi-billion dollars potentially, in order to ensure that those facilities are available for students, that there are sufficient number of facilities. So if you're splitting up a school district, if you have facilities on one side that'll seat 10,000 students, but you have 20,000 kids, you're going to have to build some facilities, and that's going to be an issue. And so those are things to look at about how that could happen. So to ensure that the facilities are equitable and that there's not an increase in costs to build additional facilities, modernize, whatever might need to happen there. Number 8 is increased property values, and this one is simply that the reason for the petition is not to increase property values. This usually more comes into play when you're dealing with, newer developments, etc. You hear it all the time when you're going into development areas that the developer wants their development to be in one school district versus the other. Sometimes it's property value, sometimes it's just they're trying to, sell houses. But we want to make sure that that is not the main reason for any district reorganization that's moving forward. And then lastly, and one of the big ones, is the effect on the fiscal status and management of the school district. And so really looking at the funding that's being received by the district now and what that funding with the hypothetical scenario would be of what that funding would look like for the 2 districts after the reorganization and what that impact might be. And that could be on a per ADA basis for how much is there and available to students, and also just on an overall basis. You don't want to leave a school district one half or the other in a position where they're deficit spending, where they're running down their reserves, or any of those types of things. And so we really do look carefully at where the district is now, and then set up hypotheticals for what it would look like after district reorganization and run that same calculation and then do a comparison to see at the end of the day what the fiscal health of those are. With all of these, you have to keep in mind that you are a district the way you are right now. And so there may be some things that somebody could look and say, well, that's not exactly the healthiest or the strongest in the current situation. But this is not looking to that, these studies. It's really looking at what the impact is of the reorganization on the district and what the consequences of that would be. So it's not going to solve anything that you have going on right now. It really is about what's going to be the after effect compared to what it is that you're looking at now and what those impacts are in those cases. All right. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Do we want Mr. Martin's presentation and then do questions all at the same time?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay. I feel like I would rather ask questions specific to this presentation.
Oh, we can do that, sure.
If possible, just to not, there might be questions that are for both, but
Sure.
I feel like I'm going to possibly lose my questions if we listen to yours
we can do
next.
Start?
I do have a couple questions. For the criterion, is it required that all 9 are met?
Correct. According to the code, all 9
And
have to
then specific to number 9, where it talks about the fiscal impact, and you look at that future possible impact. With that, do you use the proposed budgets for California, for example? for education funding and how specifically that will impact as much as we can tell with those future budgets.
So what we'll do is we'll take whenever the process would start, we'd take the district's budget at that time, and depending on where that is I talk with my hands, where that is in the budget process. For example, if this were to happen right as the governor released his budget in January, we would incorporate those new factors so that we know what that looks like. And so we try to take a look at what's relevant or current with regards to the state budget at that time, but we will start with the district's existing budget.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Board Member Perez, do you have any questions?
Not right now.
Board Member Srivastava?
I do. Thank you so much for the presentation. I was wondering if the district were to split, is there any kind of accountability after the fact to make sure that we're still meeting the criteria in years to come?
There isn't. It's just looking at the criteria at that point in time when it's being reviewed locally and then by the state board. And then after that, no, both districts are in some respects on their own. Okay. Unless there's some condition, there wasn't sufficient facilities and there was an agreement to provide facilities temporarily, those kinds of things, but otherwise, no.
Okay. And my other question was, does each level of approval for the petition evaluate the criteria individually? Or, if it was to pass, for example, this board and then move on to the next level, would they also evaluate based on the same criteria?
So this board actually wouldn't be, while you can, as far as the process is concerned, isn't actually evaluating it to determine whether or not it can move forward to the process.
Okay.
Really, this board is submitting at this level, a petition is being submitted to the county. And so at the county level, they're going to determine whether the 9 criteria are met. And then it moves to the state. And then the state is going to determine whether the 9 criteria are met.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Board Member Clark?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I just had one question about the process. You said it may take up to 4 years. Has it ever been longer? 4 years?
What I've seen, and I would say at the state level, it could take up to 4 years. I've seen 4 to 5 years by the time it's submitted to the state to when it's actually done. But it really, for them, it depends on staff time, what else is on their agenda, et cetera. So I can't speak for the state, but that's the amount of time typically I've seen it take.
And to declare an election, would that be during a general election or would that be a special election?
You know what? I have to look at the code to see if it states very specifically. I would think that the superintendent, the local, would want to do it when another election is happening, but that I will have to get back to you and look at that more closely.
Okay, thank you.
I can let superintendent know and then she can let you know.
Okay, and you may be able to answer this. I may have to wait on Sean's presentation, but the bonds, how would that work, splitting the bonds? Is it based on our ADA or who has the most money in the bag or what?
Usually what the code says with regards to bonds is you could look at it on an ADA basis or you can look at it on an assessed value basis. And so looking at the assessed valuation of the 2 separate districts and what proportion of the whole they are, and then the bonds could be distributed that way. So there's various methodologies. It's really, and we could lay out, if it was on an ADA basis, this is what it looks like. If it's on an assessed valuation, this is what it looks like. But ultimately, at the end of the day, once it does get approved and it's moving forward, a lot of these things you're going to have to sit down and kind of, negotiate or figure out and hash out, because nobody is going to then come down and hit a hammer and say, it is thus.
Right. Another question I had was the governance areas. How would that work? I know we would probably have to have a demographer come in and kind of split up that area into districts or what have you, or will it be at large until someone comes in and says, hey, Voter Rights Act, you got to split it up, and we get sued?
There's the code just lays out that as part of that vote, there can be a conversation about voting for the board members for the various districts. It doesn't necessitate or say whether it has to be at large or by district. That would be something that the districts would determine.
Okay. You did talk about ADA. I appreciate that. That's all I have for right now. I'll wait until Sean's presentation.
Board Member Hui?
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, Ms. Garcia. I think one question for now, which would be if we did contract with School Services California to complete a feasibility study, if there's any way to answer this right now, what would be the demand on our district's time, for instance, Mr. Martin or other district staff?
Most of the demand will be upfront. We are going to put together what we call a data request sheet that basically says, here's all of the information we need in order to do our analysis. So as you can imagine, we're asking for financial information, enrollment information, facilities information, bond, assessed values. It's about 2 to 3 pages, worth of data that we're going to request. And so that's going to be the most time intensive, just having them gather all of that information and providing it to us. Once we get that, we'll start our analysis. There's likely, as we go through, we'll go, oh, wait, we need this, or can you answer that question? And we'll touch bases with them throughout. But it really is that upfront. And then once we have the draft available, we'll provide that to the district to review, provide any feedback, make sure we didn't get anything factually incorrect, and make those edits and then provide it back to the school district. So it's really just that data gathering at the beginning that's pretty intensive.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense that right up front they would have a lot of work to do. Maybe not tonight, but if we do talk again at the next board meeting, I'd love to have just a better sense of what that actually might look like, if it's 40 hours of work or anything like that, just to have an idea of what we're looking at.
And I can provide the draft data request sheet to the superintendent, to the district, and they can take a look and then judge based on what we're asking for, how much time they think their staff will need to pull that together.
Board Member Lorette?
Yeah, just one question. If you had a district that was like at almost bond capacity and then you did split, what happens to the bond capacity for both districts? Does it release some of the bond capacity, or?
Potentially. You'd have to look at the assessed value of the 2 districts and see what their bonding limit is, and then see how the bond is going to be split, the monies that are remaining, and then that'll tell you what that delta is. So it really just depends on what the existing bond level is, how that split would happen, and then what the bonding capacity is of the individual districts.
Okay, thank you.
I just have 2 quick questions. The first one, I'm assuming that it's probably more common for districts to combine than to split. Is that true?
That's most of the ones that I've worked on are either combining or transferring territory from one to another.
Okay. And how many school districts have divided in the recent past? Have there been very many?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I know that the California Department of Education keeps a website that lists all the various organizations, so I can certainly look that up and provide it to the superintendent.
Yeah, I'd be kind of curious and maybe find out the reasons why they split as well.
Okay. So if that's listed, we can check.
All right, that's all questions I have right now. Why don't we do Mr. Martin's presentation, then we'll do another round of questions, and then we'll open it up for public comment.
All right, great. So at this point, we're just going to dive into some historical information with regards to Folsom, Cordova, and past conversations about district reorganization. How exciting are flowcharts? I thought that was thrilling. Thank you, Brianna. But what you see here is a document that has kind of some interwoven pieces. So the information in blue that you see here is specific to bonding and overall state bond information, and then of course specific to Folsom, Cordova. And then in the black, you're seeing information that is historical with regards to reorganization. So they kind of intertwine, and so I will walk you through this narrative as best I can, because I went through a lot of historical documents to generate this, and the team found quite a few documents that we were able to put together. And so really the first couple items are related to more at the state level and how school districts were funded. So the very first one is 1978, which I think most folks are familiar with, Proposition 13, and more or less the changing in the structure of capping property tax and at the 1% level. And this totally had a significant impact at school district level, because whereas there was local property tax that funded school districts, because of the cap, that reduced funding, and all of these things happened along the way. And so we're not going to dive into all of that, but that's important to know, because at the time that limited school districts so that they could no longer more or less tax their local community to provide services or facilities for schools. In '86, they more or less passed Proposition 46 that then allowed local governments, including school districts, that now to issue general obligation bonds. In 1992-93, Folsom Cordova went out for Measure C, which was a bond to help pay for, I don't know the very specifics of it, but a big chunk of it was related to both Rancho and Folsom, but there was a specific component of Folsom was growing and they needed dollars to build new schools, the high school, some other pieces. That measure did not pass. And so the city of Folsom ended up passing its own school facility bond, which I didn't know that you could do this, but this occurred. It was Measure J, and it passed for $42 million. And then that more or less allowed Folsom then to build the schools that were needed for the new students coming in, right? There was just no facilities. What I kind of read through the articles and the opinions and those things is this generated a kind of a split between the district. What was happening is the community on Rancho Cordova side felt that if they passed a bond, all the money would go to Folsom, but they would be taxed for it. And the Folsom side obviously wanted these dollars, and so they felt like they weren't being represented. And you have to remember at this time, Rancho Cordova was still the larger community than Folsom. And so an outside organization, and we talked about it just a minute ago about the different methodologies, and I can't speak to specifically the actions they took, but they more or less moved forward with presenting a petition to split the district, or specifically create a new school district of Folsom Unified School District. And so they submitted a petition. It went to the county committee in '94, and then the county committee did note that they did not feel that 3 of the 9 factors that we talked about were met. And I don't know what the specific factors were. Unfortunately, I couldn't find that language, and this is pre-internet, so it's not something I can easily find. We probably could go dig it out somewhere, but we weren't able to find it, at least initially. At that point, the petition then moved in 1995, it moved on, and you can see that was in August '94. In '95, it went to the state board. Remember, the CDE reviews it again for the 9 factors as was discussed, and they recommended denying the proposal as well. They agreed with the county committee that there was some areas of concern. However, the state board did approve the petition. So even though staff made a recommendation against it, the state board did approve it. So it actually did go out for a vote. And you can see that in 1996. So now we're talking about, again, that was at least 2 years, if not longer, from the initial petition. In 1996, Measure O was put forward, and it talks about splitting Folsom Cordova as Folsom Cordova unified from Folsom Unified from Folsom Cordova Unified. And the measure did not pass, and it was pretty much within the city of Folsom, it did pass at about a 62% clip, but in the community of Rancho Cordova, it did not pass at 90%. The petitioners, the folks that actually put the petition forward, then challenged it actually in court, and it actually went up to a pretty high level of court, questioning who was allowed to vote on the petition. And so it was ultimately found that everybody that lived within the boundaries of the school district had the right to vote on it. And so it did end up failing. During this same time in 1996, this was also during an election cycle, even year election cycle, and the school board changed over, and some of the members that were on the citizens committee ended up being school board members for Folsom Cordova. So this was in 1996. So then we had a school board at that point that wanted to continue conversations about the district reorganization. They continued to go back and forth. And so that's kind of that range from 97 to 99. So now the next couple items here are kind of just bond related. One of the things that happened is in June of 1997, the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors approved the ability for school districts to create specific facility districts, as Brianna was speaking to before, with regards to splitting up. Even though we're one district, we're able to sub-split into smaller districts for the purposes of passing school bonds. So we created the first 2 school facility improvement districts, SFID 1 and 2, using the boundaries of the 2 high schools at the time, which was Cordova High and Folsom High. At this time, there was only one type of bond that you could pass for schools, and it required a 2/3 approval, 66.67%, right? And in that time, the bonds were moved forward. Rancho Cordova passed a bond, Measure V, for about $10 million. And then Folsom tried to pass one in 1999, and it failed, and it was $18 million. And so those were more or less individualized bonds that each community then approved to tax themselves and then would be used for the schools that were within that school boundary range, okay? In 2000, the board requested to have a study done on the ability to do reorganization. School services provided that. I will tell you, your fee has significantly increased since then. But
It's been 23 years.
Yes, that's true. We'll give you that one. And so the board went in a 4-1 vote. We're in favor of going it forward with the petition. The big thing that, what happened here is First School Services did their study first, found that the district realistically could not meet all of the obligations, specifically the financial components. When the district split, they would be financially upside down. They wouldn't be able to afford that. So that was in 2000. At the same time in that year, Measure M fails for Folsom, again, requiring the 2/3 vote. Interestingly enough, in November of 2000, a Proposition 39 passes, which creates a new school facility bond mechanism, which only requires 55%. And then it requires some fiscal oversight and other language. And traditionally, that's pretty much the bond that most school districts pass now. I honestly, being this close to Sacramento and the issues that happened in Folsom, I'm thinking that there was some impact because of what was happening in Folsom that this proposition moved forward. I won't lie, I didn't specifically tie those things together in language, but I can kind of get the sense that the community of Folsom helped create Proposition 39 and get that activity through. But then continuing on, in 2001, the board selected a different firm, Educational Research Consultants, which I don't think is no longer in existence. So I'm just going to say that was the case at the time. And then they said that, yes, the district could be financially viable with a split. And so the board in 2002 took action to pass a petition and forward it on to the Sacramento County Reorganization Board. And then at that point, that committee found that they felt that 4 of the sections, you can see those there, of the 9 were not substantially met. They voted on a 7-0 unanimous not to recommend the reorganization. However, it did continue on to the state from there. The state board then received it in that time in 2002, but state board did not take any actions until 2004. So in the meantime, in 2002, because of the new Prop 39 measurement where you could do 55%, both Folsom and Rancho Cordova passed bonds, Measure C and B, and you can see those there. You see 2003, no action. So that was what Brianna was also speaking to, is the state board takes its time on these things. In 2004, there was an additional vote by the board, and they decided on a 3-2 vote that they would rescind the petition. But because it was already in the process, you can't actually pull it out. It's already in the state board. So the state board would then still have to take a look and take action. CDE staff looked at it. They also recommended disapproval of it. And then the state board finally did take action in November 9th, 2004, more or less disproving the petition. So, and that was the last formal action that we could find on district reorganization. There was a little bit of conversation about a reorganization in the sense of before Anatolia, which is south of Douglas and Sunrise there, was built, there was conversations about incorporating or moving that, transferring that into Folsom Cordova, but that never came about. I didn't end up putting it in there because it's a separate conversation, really. It was just a particular activity at that time, but no action ever occurred of that one. So if you want to scroll down just a little further, just have some more historical information on there. So in 2005, Folsom Cordova created SFID 3, which was everything south of Highway 50. Now remember, SFID 1 and 2 did also overlap in those areas because it was all of Rancho, or more or less the boundaries of Cordova High at that time, and then Folsom High at the time. Vista was not created. And so SFID 1 and 2, when they created SFID 3, which was south of 50, because all of that area, and it's east of Sunrise, south of 50 to the county line, which was more or less unincorporated, well, it's not an incorporated area, but there was nothing built at the time. That was Measure M was put forward on that, and it failed the first time and then passed the second time in 2007. Separately, the district also created SFID 4, which would be Rancho Cordova, but it did not include the areas that were under Measure M. So more or less SFID 1 was Rancho Cordova with some of the Measure M area, and then SFID 4 was created because they wanted to separate that out because that was kind of our existing schools in the Rancho Cordova area. And they didn't want to include Measure M in that because they didn't want to overlap and double tax, because you're trying to create a bond for all the new construction versus the construction for the modernization in all of the existing schools. And that was the reason why all these SFIDs were created. And then SFID 5 is the Folsom version of that, which is the Folsom area, not including the area that would be covered under Measure M, which is more or less north of 50 for Folsom. Right. Rancho has some south of 50 because of the fact that you have that little area where Mather is and where Navigator is, in that area in there. So, and so those were created, and then bonds were passed for each of those. Measure M, just so you know, was a 2/3 measure. So that because there was different requirements, and you didn't have to have some of the other pieces. They decided to go with a 2/3 bond measure. But all the other measures that we've passed have been the Prop 39, which is the 55%, which that's why we have the committees that come and present the audit findings to you and do those reports. And we even have a committee on Measure M, even though we're not required to have it. So you can see the different passages that occurred there. We will, in a future meeting, be bringing you guys more specifics about the bonds. We're probably aiming for April, May. We are working on, because you can see the last bonds that were really passed were 2012, 2014. And we have obviously needs, and those bonds are, well, to be honest, I think both of them are pretty much close to being done. And so we are in the place where we will be needing to go out for bonds again for both of those. All of the bonds are pretty much completed except for Measure M, which is the south of 51. We have quite a bit of money left on that one. And then I believe Measure N, because of the fact we were not able to access all of the funds because the assessed value was not high enough to access the remaining funds, because we're actually taxing at a rate over the other part with Prop 39 is you're capped at, I believe, $60 per $100,000 of assessed value. And we are currently taxing at a rate of slightly over $60 because the assessed value in that community hasn't risen enough to offset the bond payments that we have outstanding for it. So that's where there's a cap potentially, but we could always go out for another bond, a new bond, and then that would reset that $60 threshold. So there is a ability to do that. So those are kind of just a quick update, overlapping kind of our historical bond pieces. But what you can see is I think one of the things that when we looked at this and Sarah and I were talking was the fact that one of the big reasons for the conversation at the time of reorganization was this idea of needing bond dollars and facility needs on the two sides of the community. And through the passage of SFIDs and passage of these bonds, the concerns that were generated were resolved, through that discussion. And so, that I think we wanted to continue that conversation forward about what the concerns are and what we can do to resolve those issues. So, all right. Any questions on that one? This was fun. It's good stuff.
Why don't we start with the students? Board Member Perez?
Yeah, I had two questions. I think one might be for Mr. Martin, sorry. Who is responsible for the expenses associated with the district reorganization?
So if the board wanted to move forward, the study that would need to be done would be a district cost.
Okay. Yeah. And then what is the process for proposing a transfer of territory?
It's effectively the same. There is a 25% and a 10% petition, and so there's just some slight nuances. But it's still a petition has to be put forward either by voters, by a board, community members. It goes to the county committee. They review it, approve it, and then it would potentially go to the state board. So big picture is the same, but nuances are different.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Board Member Shavasa?
No questions, but thank you for the thorough presentation, Mr. Martin. It's a lot of information. It's interesting.
You're welcome.
Board Member Clark?
Thank you, Sean. What happens to these SFIDs if we split? Where do they go?
Well, I think, as Ms. Garcia was speaking to, that would be part of the negotiation process. You know, the existing bonds that have been expended, that I would assume that those would just continue to be expended based off of the current SFID boundaries. I think where there's an overlap that would have to be, the conversation would be SFID 3, which is Measure M, because that encompasses both communities south of Highway 50, right? The money has not been fully expended, so that would be determined, and then the money that has been spent, we would have to identify which community that potentially those dollars have been, and then reallocate potentially the taxing on that. And I don't know, I've never, you know, as we talked about, there's never been a split of such an organization, so or a structure, and so it would, I mean, I won't lie, it would be interesting to do, but I don't know the methodology of it, right?
Right.
That might involve
Always
some
a
attorneys.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's talk money. I understand that we could be responsible for paying for this feasibility study. What's the cost?
I believe the quote was $70,000. The proposal is included, and if you'd like, we can discuss the proposal. She kind of spoke to it already, but if you'd like to, you know, they would require the data from us. They would review it, bring us back a report, and really it would be outlining whether or it's not going to tell you whether or not you should do it. It's going to tell you whether or not the 9 categories will be met or not. Right? It's a very factual calculation, and it is as good as the information we are able to provide them based off of our budget and what we know and how we can split up the information between the 2 districts, because obviously we would need to know how are we splitting the districts so that we know at what boundary point are students being put to one location or the other, and those types of things. So.
Okay, and I know that my colleague, Mr. Hui, Vice President Hui, requested a breakdown of the hours that staff and the costs that staff, you know, would accrue for this. Is that included in the 70,000 or?
No, that would be our time. Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have for right now.
Board Member Lofthouse?
I think we covered it, but looking back in the years, is there a way to also determine, I saw the one determined which areas we did not meet, but as a staff, we could probably look to see what changes have occurred from that time to now to see if anything has changed in those criterion, because offhand, I wrote down the criterion that I didn't think we met, and it was the exact same 4 that we didn't meet the last time we looked at this. So I feel like $70,000 is a lot of money. It's a counselor, right? Or close to it. And I'm not sure much has changed, except for the fact that our budget's not looking so hot in the next few years at the state, so.
Yeah, and we don't have anything that was done for the analysis back in the 90s. We do have the 2002 documents. I will say that a lot of the structure, I mean, because enrollment has changed significantly, the financial pieces would all have to be redone. When it comes to that demographic studies, same thing, because our populations have shifted. Like we said, we more or less now we're 2/3 Folsom, where, you know, population-wise, whereas before we were 2/3 Rancho Cordova. Also, the funding mechanism was a totally different measurement. It was revenue limit, which had totally different calculations in it than the local control funding formula, which we get funded with now. So I think any of the financial components or anything that would be data-driven, we would need to look at the new information. Obviously, some of the things, as Brianna was speaking to, is subjective to a certain nature because there isn't a specific percentage. So, you know, that is what is the reasonable person standard, right, type of thing on some of those, so.
And then also, do we look at, I mean, you mentioned that we could figure out the districts that have potentially moved forward to split districts. After spending the last week discussing school finance with CSBA, those small districts are the ones that are the most concerned at the outlook of the state budgets, and which would lend itself to why districts are combining to create larger districts rather than these small districts that will be gravely impacted by state budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think if your question is related to two small individual districts trying to weather the financial burden of the state budget versus one district, yes, I think there is economies of scale that occur with that. You know, one of the things that will be calculated is, and we've discussed, is that there is a funding adjustment that potentially could occur in the fact that if you split two districts, because Rancho Cordova could potentially qualify for consolidation or concentration funding. But I think one of the factors is on here is the impact to the state. And so I think we have to look at that and how that would be calculated in it. And that's where I'm not an expert for sure.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I had that written down.
Board Member Hui?
Oh, thank you. You just mentioned it. And I think, by the way, thank you for this. It's really fun. I mean, we knew you were a great accountant. We didn't know you were a great historian. So well done. And I think it might be relevant to add to this document that when the funding formula did change.
Okay. Sure.
It just seems like in 2002 and previous to that even, we were looking at a completely different situation were the districts to split based on that funding formula. So I think off the top of my head it was like 2013 or 14. Somebody else might know better than I do.
Yeah, it's Jerry Brown time. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the only, I guess not a question but comment that I think it probably is relevant to this discussion if we move on.
Sure, for sure.
Board Member Lorette?
Yeah, just a question really quick on Measure M. So we have $750 million, and that's supposed to be for the new build out for both the new Folsom schools and the new Rancho Cordova schools, correct?
Yeah, it covers the entire area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with the rate that we're spending our elementary schools, what is the possibility of any of the $750 million reaching any of our Rancho Cordova schools and build?
That's a great question. We can bring back that. That's one of the things we're going to be analyzing. Part of that Rancho Cordova is based off the build out, and we're dependent upon the developers. So Rancho Cordova actually was supposed to be built out first because of the development with Westboro and the more or less the Aerojet land. That whole area, actually, they had the entitlements before anybody else. And so this was back when the bond was first getting passed. They thought they were going to actually start building out the Rancho schools first. And that's why it was sized at the price, at $750 million. At that time, if we had built out the schools on that original time frame, we would have been able to buy all the schools. Now, obviously, with 60% escalation in cost for land purchase, we're not able to do that. And so that is a very fair question because the communities all of those communities will be responsible for the taxing, right? And yet we want to ensure that they get an equal share on the facilities. So that really depends upon, because you don't want to build a school. Well, first, we can't even build a school in the locations we have because they haven't built the roads. Right. So that's what we're also dependent upon. So that is part of the conversation is as a board, if we want to, if you want to identify, how those dollars are allocated out or to ensure that the community is equally represented with those dollars, that will be part of the conversation for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Is the School Services of California, I assume there are other companies that perform this service as well, or do you have the market share in the state?
I believe there are a couple of other companies. I know that we do our fair share of these, and that the state board has recognized the work that we're doing. But there are a couple of other companies, or at least one other that I know of that has done it recently.
Okay. And then I have a question. I mean, the interesting thing with Rancho Cordova and Folsom, roughly 99.9% of Folsom is within the FCUSD school district. But in the case of Rancho Cordova, it's about 70% of Rancho Cordova is in the Folsom Cordova Unified School District, with the remaining 30% being in Elk Grove and Sac Unified. If hypothetically the city of Rancho Cordova wanted to have a school district that was coterminous with its boundaries, wouldn't it make more sense for the city of Rancho Cordova to essentially be the lead agency and sponsor, because they'd want to take land from 3 different districts to create a district that encompassed the entire school or the entire city? Would that not be correct?
And you're saying that bringing those cities together would also be requiring territory from other school districts?
Correct. It would be territory from 3 school districts instead of 1.
Then, yeah, you as a board could not put forward a petition for that because you'd need the other school boards to also be on board with that. But yes, the city could do it. Individual property owners, homeowners could do it or bring something like that forward, or other individuals.
Now, if hypothetically we decide to remain the same district that we are right now, but the school district was interested in essentially transferring those lands that are in SAC Unified and Elk Grove that are within the boundaries of the city of Rancho Cordova, that would be a similar process, but that would be a transfer of land.
It would be a territory transfer, but yes, similar process.
And that would require would that require Elk Grove School District and SAC Unified to agree to that? Or?
That would be one option for a petition where all 3 school districts agree, or a city council could move it forward, or people that live within those areas could bring forward a petition to have that territory transferred.
Okay. All right. I was kind of curious how that would work. Okay. That's all the questions I have right now. So why don't we go to public comment, and then we can bring it back to the board. All right. The first speaker is Madeline Sanderson. Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Kaligian, President Reed, and Board. I'm here tonight to express my support in having a study done. I do not see any reason in why this would not be something that we would take a look at. The study would be able to give us a clear picture on where we are in terms of data, provide transparency to the community as a whole on both the Rancho Cordova side as well as the Folsom side. I am always wanting us to do what is best for our students. This comes from the heart of a parent, community member, and the lead home visitor at the Folsom Cordova Community Partnership, where I serve families on both sides of our current district within my caseload. I've often heard at the last few board meetings that we need to remember that we are a unified district. I would like to just read what our California Education Code Section 83 states. It states that a unified school district means a district maintaining grades kindergarten or 1 through 12. A unified district may comprise territory in more than one county. Yes, we are the Folsom Cordova Unified School District, but we do have 2 drastically different communities. Is that a bad thing? Not at all. But this does mean that our 2 communities have different needs, and these needs carry over into our schools and mainly affects our students. The students that are to be represented by any district they belong to. Again, I express my support in wanting to have a study done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is, I think it says Brian Arnold. Is that right? Welcome.
Good morning. Good evening, members. Sorry, it's been a very long day. I also wish to express my desire to have a study done and to move forward with that. The demographics, the needs, the intricacies of the different communities are unique, and I think need to be assessed in that way. As the woman was saying earlier regarding during the public comment period, the focus needs to be on localized control, localized governance to address the communities. My daughter is at Mitchell. They're dealing with their own problems, such as not having heat for the entire winter due to a boilers problem, which as a parent is maddening, that they're dealing with space heaters. If it was localized, there may be different remedies to those items. She's in sports program as well. All the good athletes don't go to her school. They go elsewhere because there are different opportunities. There are different programs already in place. Different communities have different needs. So as a parent, I'm in full support of assessing the study. $70,000 does not seem a whole lot to me since I'm paying a whole lot more than that in taxes anyways. Let's get it done. Let's move forward in the best interests of the students. And to read from one of my one of my dear friends in the Anatolia area, which is outside of our district. He said they're in full support of this. Ultimately, we all want what is best for Rancho Cordova residents and their children to all be in the same district. I have many of my kids' friends who they don't go to school with. They go a little further east than to Mitchell or Navigator. We have such a diverse and rich community. I'm sure that his boys, my kids, would like to be in the same district as all their friends, that we go to school, that we go to church. We all are in the same community. We live towards the down. We would like to all be together. And so I'm in full support of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Conrad Mayer. Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Clegan, Board President Reed, and all of you this evening. I think myself and Matt might be the only ones here that have sat on this same reorganization. They just called it a school split back 20-something years ago. But the difference between now and then, and I think I could be wrong, the main holdup was the criteria number 9. And that was because we didn't have a big brother in the city of Folsom. We had a newly city forming, and there wasn't the resources available to assess whether or not we had that strong support like the city of Folsom has for its community. I've heard a lot of talk about monies, not a whole lot of talk about kids. Each of our communities have different problems and different things that need to be addressed, and I think we are spread so thin we can't deal with them all. I think a reassessment and a resplit will give us a rebooting that will allow specific problems to be addressed in each of our communities. Last time I spoke, I was against it. I was fearful that we didn't have the representation, and I know we do now. We have the people in our community to do what's necessary. I too don't think that $70,000 is a whole lot of money, since our big brother, the city of Rancho Cordova, has been funding a lot of things necessary for our community when it comes to schools. I was told that our city is going to grow 3 times the size in the next 20 years, and that will be an awfully huge district. So I think we should move forward and prepare for the increase in size of both of our communities in the best interests of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker would be David Sander. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Board Chair. I just want to reiterate or point out that I come here as a private citizen. I'm not representing a governmental body on which I may have been elected and served for the past 20 years. This is an issue that is really close to my heart. I've worked on this relationship between my community and the school district for over 20 years, I think probably 25 years at this point. And there have been ups and downs during that time frame. I think my interest and my community's interest has always been focused on the kids in our community in Rancho Cordova. And at this point, after that many years, sort of with the same struggles, reiterations of those struggles, I think it's time to look outside of the box that we've looked at before and examine this as an opportunity. There are, obviously, there's been a change in how schools are funded that would recognize the sort of special character of Rancho Cordova at this point, perhaps meet some of our needs better than the joint district can do. And we would like to explore those and look at those in some detail, and I think this is the first step to doing so. If this is a financial issue, I would suggest that there probably are other funders in the region who might be interested in looking at that, and I would be more than happy to discuss those with you offline. But thank you very much for your work here, and I look forward to working with you on this and many other topics. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Garrett Gatewood. Welcome.
Thank you. I stand before you as a city councilman of the city of Rancho Cordova. We believe that we would love to do this study, and we would cover it if you guys can't afford it. And I'm kind of disturbed to hear that we haven't had heat at one of our schools for 4 months. And if you guys need money for that, we'll cover that too. Rancho Cordova wants to be taken care of, and I think it's time for this study to be cleared up. And I think it's time to see if it's time for us to stand on our own as a group. And I think it's not us. It's just sounds financially fit. And I think it's the best representation of our community. And I think Rancho Cordovans are wanting this. And I think it's time to take that step. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Tracy Suter. Welcome.
Before I start, I also want to add San Juan, which has control over the Gold River portion of Rancho Cordova, and they also were very much involved in one of those early split discussions and did not show interest in leaving San Juan at the time. So when I started as a teacher in 1989 at Cordova High School, the veteran teachers at Cordova High School were very quick to tell me about the glory days of the 70s and the 80s when there was Aerojet and a thriving Mather Air Force Base. I worked at Folsom Lake Community College when it was 2 portables in a field in the middle of nothing, which it certainly no longer is. So Folsom has changed enormously. Rancho Cordova changed when it became a city and had incredibly positive impact as a city. So as these things ebb and flow, and I've lived through all this, the thing I don't think we've discussed, yes, finances play a part of it. And a Byzantine process, along with the impact of trying to duplicate or split or inevitably double some of the costs of running districts, has been daunting. The thing that I think we're missing is that every time this conversation has come up, whether it got this far or not, it's been a blinking red light about communication. You have families and communities that feel unheard, unlistened to, underserved, and that's what's causing the discussion. So maybe before we pay the divorce lawyer, we should think about getting some counseling on our communication, our listening skills, as well as our communicating skills, because that, I think, is really the heart of where a lot of these things are coming from. People aren't feeling served, and they aren't feeling heard. And that is maybe as much as a conversation that should be taking place as discussion of bonds and all those 9 criteria, which I really do think we're going to have difficulty meeting in at least 3 or 4 really critical junctions, including the financial piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Matthew Hans. Welcome.
Good evening, school board, Dr. Sarah Kaligian, president. I come to you guys as a resident of Rancho Cordova, Cordova High School. I graduated in the class of 2020. I went to Peter J. Shields, went to Mills Middle School, graduated Cordova High, and now I'm pursuing other adventures and ambitions in real estate. And, you know, seeing the development of Cordova over the years has been, you know, tremendous. There's a lot going on. I think that by splitting the districts, you know, I think that there's some potential there for hearing what some of these kids are involved in. My personal experience, I was class president all 4 years at Cordova High. So I understand what it's like being in their shoes and understanding that some of these kids, you know, don't have the representation that we feel like is needed. Kids who are lower to moderate income don't have the opportunities that I've seen from going to SAB meetings, to attending different Folsom High meetings, to attending Vista meetings. So I think this opportunity for a district reorganization in whatever faculty should be explored, just because I feel like that the Rancho Cordova kids deserve for a better future. I was fortunate to have an individual like Mr. Francisco in my life and Mills Middle School to invest in my future and invest in me. And I feel like more opportunities like that, being able to have the funding, being able to have the community representation, and by separating a district, have that voice for each and every one of the students, I think is very important. So once again, I come to you as a current student at Folsom Lake, a current resident of Rancho Cordova, and someone who loves what you guys have done and individuals that I have personal relationships and have met over the years. So I just, as a student, as someone who was in leadership and who's currently in leadership, just have the consideration to something different and explore this option because I feel like it is a valid pursuit of the future of some of these kids in Rancho Cordova that are struggling. So with that being said, thank you, Dr. Sarah Kaligian, the president, David, and the rest of the school board. And once again, I just ask that you consider this. And I think that if we can explore something like this for Cordova High and Rancho Cordova, and of course Folsom as well, just to have a different perspective, I think that is something that we should at least consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have, all right, online.
Yes, we have Jennifer.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Sorry about that. As a resident of Rancho Cordova, I fully support this. I would like to see us redistricted and stuff. I know you cannot see me, but I am a redhead, and I feel that Rancho Cordova is sometimes looks at as the redheaded stepchild, that we get the hand-me-downs and stuff of Folsom when things are needed. Instead of getting us new things, we get the things from Folsom schools and things are handed down. So I just think that this would be a great opportunity since Rancho Cordova is celebrating this year 20 years as becoming a city. It's about time that we look at redistricting and having our own schools and our own area. Excuse me. I'm trying not to choke right now. I'm talking to you. So I fully support this study and really hope that it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the only online? Okay. All right, back to the board. This is discussion only. I guess any thoughts that the board wishes to share as we decide whether to move forward?
I just have a clarifying question, if I could ask a question. It's probably for Ms. Garcia. I know Board President Reed had mentioned earlier, if the city brought this forth, would that make more sense? I'm just wondering if that was from the city of Rancho Cordova, would it be the same process, at least with working with the district staff on the school district's end?
Yes, I would still, all of the data with regards to what would happen with the district, the finances, information about facilities, all of that would still need to come from the school district. So while the city council would put forward the petition, I'd still be coming to staff to get all of that same data and information.
Okay, thank you.
I would clarify that because if it did come from the city and they were trying to incorporate the entire city of Rancho Cordova, they would then also need to get data from the neighboring districts as well. So that would be, and I'm sure the analysis cost for school services would be different for that as well.
If they were looking to work both with Elk Grove Unified, Sac City Unified, they would have to do that. If it was the same conversation we're having tonight, it was just the city requesting it, then the same process would happen.
If you're talking about, yes, just splitting your district, but if you're talking about bringing in other districts, Mr. Martin's correct. We'd have to reach out to those other districts to get information as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Clark?
Yeah, I just need clarification on basically the land transfers, and what I'm equating it to is basically absorbing those schools that are in Rancho Cordova. That's going to be a whole nother process, correct? I mean, you're going to have to get the city council involved, the voters involved. I just want clarification on that.
You're saying if you were incorporating other areas that are within the school district right now?
Yeah, let's say, who's in Rancho Cordova? A.M. Wynn, for example, to absorb them in, or Bob McGarvey Elementary to absorb them in. We would both have to work with Sacramento City Unified, or their city council, or Elk Grove Unified, or their city council. I mean, I just kind of want clarification on how that would work.
Well, one body, for example, a city council of Rancho Cordova could put together or could put forth a petition and say, we want all of the schools within our city boundaries to be part of one school district.
Is that possible?
Yes, they can move forward and do that, and then, but that would require that us or whomever is doing the study get data from all 3 school districts to put together an analysis about the impacts on all 3 districts if that were to happen.
Would that prolong the timeline of everything, the whole process? You know, you were mentioning 4 or 5 years.
Nope, it would still
Okay,
be the
it would
same
still be in
process.
the same. Okay, awesome. All right, that's all I have.
Could I just ask a follow-up question really quick
Yes.
on that? So the feasibility study that you proposed, if it was to incorporate all of the city of Rancho Cordova, that feasibility study would be carried out 3 times ultimately with the
No.
different districts?
We would do one feasibility study, but it would
So
get
all
a little bit bigger.
3 areas would have to meet
Correct.
those 9
It would
criteria?
be one, well, it's not that the areas would need to, it's that reorganization proposal. So we'd be looking at, these are the 3 districts right now. This is what it looks like after the reorganization. So we'd just be looking at basically more area under one proposal, but we would be doing fiscal analysis, all of those things on 3 separate school districts plus this new proposed
Okay.
district instead of just the one being split.
Okay.
And that's not something we could request.
Right,
So we only have jurisdiction within our district boundaries.
understood.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, you know, after listening to everything, yeah, maybe it might be a good idea to move forward with this study. But I'm going to share my concerns moving forward. There is talk through CSBA about the state budget that maybe, I think we're looking at $5 billion. You know, deficit moving forward might be more to $8 billion in 2 years. I know some of that's going to trickle down to the school districts. Talking to some of my delegates through CSBA, they talk about the smaller districts really are going to be hurting, and this is my fear. I'm very worried about the existing programs that we have in place right now. I'm worried about our CTE going away, our IB going away, our extra period at Mitchell going away, our special ed going away. I want to study. I want to really look at it with an open mind, but I'm definitely afraid of what's going to happen in the sustainability of Rancho Cordova, you know, trying to hang, and all these things are going to go away. And if I can be reassured that they're not going to go away, okay, great. But, you know, one of the speakers talked about the build out and how Rancho Cordova is going to triple. I probably think it's probably going to be about 15 to 17 years where, yeah, it's going to be like 3 times the size. That would be great for Rancho Cordova to have their own district. But, okay, maybe we want to jump on it now, but I'm going to support this study. You know, I wrote down the figure of $70,000. Do I think it can go to something else, like maybe a STEM or a STEAM or part of that? Yeah, sure. But you know what? Let's go for it. Let's get the study done. That's it.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment, right?
Yes.
So I am hearing a lot of Rancho Cordova input and the desire to dive deeper into the study. And although initially I didn't like the idea of splitting, after listening to a lot of public comments, I'd rather do more research for now than before my final verdicts. So I support my community and think that we should listen to them, but as also keep our students in mind through the entire process. So.
Board Member Srivastava.
Thank you. I just want to echo Mr. Clark's point about maintaining the programs that we currently have in the district. I think there's a lot of places for self-improvement within Folsom Cordova that I think we might look into before pursuing a step like district separation. And I'm also concerned about the new charter schools that are coming to Rancho Cordova, considering that we're anticipating loss in funding due to those charters. And I'm wondering how that will impact, this larger discussion about district separation. And I'm also concerned that the criterion might not be fulfilled, and even in the case that it did, for the sake of the petition and the reorganization, that we would be able to maintain those standards in years to come. And if there's no way of, ensuring accountability for those things, I wouldn't want us to be in the situation where we split and then, the quality of education that students are receiving downgrades in years to come. So I would support the study and at least gathering more information, but I definitely have concerns. Thanks.
Board Member Laurent?
Yeah, so I think part of where this comes from Rancho Cordova residents is just, it feels like a lot of time that they've brought forth concerns and not really feeling very heard on things. We pulled data from CIF, and just from an athletic standpoint, here's just some rough number data, and this is off the CIF website. We have 437 athletes at Cordova High, 24% of our student body. We have 32 coaches, which is a 13%, almost 14% ratio to student to coach. At Folsom, we have 982 with 38%. We have 128 coaches. At Vista, we have 105 coaches. We still are not meeting the needs of our community when we're looking at discrepancies of 32 coaches to 128 coaches to 105 coaches. And I think that that's where a lot of this stems from. And, I think that, when we're talking about funding and things like that, and, I know Mr. Martin had talked several meetings ago about the possibility of additional funding. Being up on this side now, I know there's not unlimited amount of funds to spread for all the needs for everything that we're needing and things like that. But by not exploring at least a study to see what that would look like and the feasibility for that, and trying to maybe get those extra funds so that we could get more supports. I mean, every school that I have gone to pretty much on visits, when you ask them about translation services, do you have translation services? Yes. Do you have enough? We can always use more, and that's I think where, as much as we're trying to, balance the ship for everybody's needs, there's still always that need for just that additional support. And I think then when you're just looking at two different communities and the Folsom side too, we want to support their programs and what they're needing. And, is it that we've got stuff that we're pulling to Rancho where maybe some of the Folsom programs are suffering because we're having to move funding to Rancho. It's really hard to write that, and I think that, at least looking at the study, you're going to go in and you're going to say, hey, this is where it's looking. I feel like we're looking at almost two different conversations. There's a conversation of just splitting the district, and then there's a conversation of whether the city decides they want to go for it, because if you are pulling in Oak Grove students as Sac City students, you would have an actually pretty large district that would probably be fairly close to what our existing numbers are now. So I think that's two different conversations, and I think that's a conversation for the city to take on, what they want to do and where they want to go with that. But, I think for every time we have a meeting when we have data, we can only improve with the data. And we're either going to get the data and we're going to say this is something that looks great for all students, or this is something that looks terrible for all students. And I don't think we're going to know what that answer is until we actually look at that data. So that's it.
Okay. As for myself, I would be supportive of doing a study. However, I think there's a missing step before we do the study. I think we need to have a conversation with the city of Rancho Cordova to see what their ultimate goal is. Is their ultimate goal to have a district that's coterminous with their boundaries, or are they interested in splitting the district of Folsom Cordova and that alone? And the only way we're going to, while we had two city council members from Rancho Cordova here today who spoke, not necessarily on behalf of the city council, but on their own, we don't know what the other three city council members in Rancho Cordova think about this idea. I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a joint meeting of the city council, the city of Rancho Cordova, and the Folsom Cordova Unified School Board. We're allowed to do that under law. We just have to jointly publish it. identify a location and a time, and then have both bodies meet together to have that conversation. Because why would we spend $70,000 on a study if it doesn't align with what the city leaders in Rancho Cordova are interested in? If they're interested in a coterminous district with their city boundaries, then we are not the local authority that would make sense to move forward with this. It's the city council. But again, we're not going to find that out until the two bodies have a conversation. And I think that's a conversation that probably needs to take place higher than a 2-by-2 between the city and the school district. So what I would propose is that the superintendent, if the majority of my colleagues would agree, that the superintendent reach out to the city of Rancho Cordova and inquire if they would be interested in having a joint meeting between the council and the board.
I would just say, yeah, I would very much be in favor of that for all the reasons you laid out.
Would it not be beneficial to also include Folsom City Council in that same conversation, as both cities would be vastly impacted? While it seems to me, based on who was in this room, this is a city proposal that was brought to us. And in that, I disagree with our district or our school board moving forward with a study when I can look at this and pretty clearly know that without hours and hours and hours and hours of work that our staff would have to put in and take away from our students. So not only is that money being taken away from our students, that time is also being taken away from our students because the staff don't just work to pull data. And they all have very busy jobs that have a direct impact on our students. And so while it seems very apparent who is pushing forward with this proposal or this desire, for me, I don't agree with moving forward with it because I can look at this and know that we will not, as a district, meet those 9 criterion. And that's maybe from my years in this district. Maybe it's my knowledge on how school finance works. But there would be a pretty negative impact for both districts at the end of the day. While I understand that there's this looming amount of money that Rancho Cordova could potentially get for students, that's also prior to that 20 years down the line where we're timesing by 3. That's not going to be low-income housing south of 50 in Rancho Cordova. That's going to drastically change the student population in Rancho Cordova. So while this decision is being looked at right now, we have to, for the benefit of every single student in Folsom and Rancho Cordova, look ahead, not just look at right now or look at 5 years from now. We have students that are in kindergarten that in 20 years, they will be graduating high school, and the impact will be absolutely huge on them. And so historically, our district is great at making decisions for right now. One of the reasons I'm here is because the foresight isn't always there when we make decisions, and we have to look at the impact beyond right now.
I'm hearing, well, at least one board member that doesn't want to move forward, and I'm hearing 4 that are willing to move forward with the study. Where is the board on a joint meeting with the city council? Yeah? Okay.
With both cities?
With both cities, or?
Figure out what that would look like. I don't see why we couldn't do that.
Well, how about this? You could maybe reach out to the Folsom side and see if they would be interested in engaging in a conversation on this. This initiative appears to be coming from the Rancho side. So, if the city of Folsom would like to participate, then I don't see any reason why we couldn't have a joint meeting of all three entities. We might have to find a bigger room. We could probably use one of our gymnasiums or something of that nature if we had to, so.
I'm just curious from Ms. Garcia, have you experienced anything of, joint meetings prior to the process with the jurisdictions that are considering either merging or separating?
Usually by the time we're brought in, it's because a petition has been provided to the county committee, and it's the county committee actually that's hiring us to look at the 9 criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't had any direct experience with joint meetings ahead of that.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Superintendent, do you feel you have clear direction from the board on this?
I do, as far as reaching out to both city managers to ask them, who are my counterparts, with working with their city councils and doing a joint board meeting with all 3 governing bodies together to talk about, again, probably a similar presentation as tonight and moving forward with a feasibility study or not. Is that what am I understanding that correctly from our board?
Yes. Yeah. All right. No further questions? All right. I think we're done with this agenda item now. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
And Mr. Martin, thank you very much for the history. That was interesting. All right, that takes us to agenda item 14, Superintendent's Report.
Yeah, just a few shout outs. I want to thank our counselors for all that they do every day in support of our students, and your very thorough presentation too. It doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you to those that are here, those that might be watching, and those that do the work every single day that aren't here with us today. I want to thank our amazing drumline program that is continuing to grow at Mills Middle School under the direction of our new drumline director. We're very excited about that expansion of the visual and performing arts in our middle schools and high schools too. I also want to congratulate again the students that participated in our SEL Art Day and just again illustrating what it means to be uplifting our minds and hearts together, and how students navigate that piece of their life and when we think about the whole child. I also want to congratulate our classified employees of the year for 2023. These are now posted on our website, but we have many outstanding classified employees, but 8 of them have been nominated by their colleagues and will be recognized at our employee recognition ceremony and have also been moved forward to the Sacramento County Office of Ed. But these 7 folks, I do want to call out and congratulate them. Amber Demas out of Health Services, Daniel Erickson, Transportation Services, Aaron Hickey Grudem, Food and Nutrition Services, Gracie Bolster, Paraprofessional, Carrie Waddell, Custodial Maintenance Services, Omera Johnson, Clerical and Administrative Services, and Terry Douglas, Security Services. So again, congratulations. We wish them all at the county, but we're definitely celebrating them today and at our upcoming celebration. And again, I want to recognize Betty Jo Wessinger and our special ed team and our CAC, our parents, our staff, our students for their participation in over 300 pieces of artwork. This room was full of not only students and families, but many happy faces and students just so happy to show off their work. It was a very special event, and you can still see some of that artwork today. And just wish everyone a very restful and hopefully peaceful spring break. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 15, board member reports. We'll start with board member Perez.
Thank you. First, I absolutely love the Mills Drumline. It's always such a great opening for a board meeting. Congratulations to Cordova High's drama department on the launch of Mean Girls, the musical, and the opening show being tonight. Cordova is actually the first school in the state to be able to put this on, so it's amazing. Go check them out this week and next week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at the Performing Arts Center. Also, Cordova's HOSA members are currently at state conference in downtown Sacramento. I had to return today, but I will be competing in the behavioral health component tomorrow, so best of luck to all of our future healthcare professionals. And that's it. Have a restful spring break. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Shrivastava.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to also recognize the amazing performance from Mills and also the presenting of the flag today. Those were such a great way to kick off the meeting, and those students are so talented. And also congratulations to all of our students who won something in the SEL Day Art Competition. Beautiful artwork, and it's so great to see those kids. And then I also just want to encourage all students who have any kind of interest in leadership or advocacy to look into applying to a student advisory board. Our applications are being released tomorrow, and any secondary student is welcome to apply to be an SAB representative. It's a great opportunity to learn leadership skills and work on advocacy projects in our district. I personally have found it to be such a fulfilling experience. And then any student, junior or senior, or sophomore or junior, who has any kind of experience in leadership within our school community is more than welcome to apply to be student board member. And I'm hoping we'll get some qualified candidates for next year. So yeah, I encourage all students to apply to that. And yeah, that's it for now. Happy spring break soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Lofthouse.
I also wanted to recognize Mills Drumline. It's fantastic to start our meeting like that, and I sort of feel like we always need a musical introduction for our board meetings. And also the special ed art show is fabulous to look at. I love seeing the art on the walls in here, so I would also propose that that stays up too for a while. And then congratulations to the SEL Art Contest winners and all of the participants, not just the winners that were here tonight. And it's a testament to students learning in the classroom and truly believing in SEL, and that's been a big push for our schools, and it is clearly recognized in the number of participants in the art program. So, and I think that attributes a lot to Dr. Peace. So thank you for that. And then I look forward to all of the SAB applicants coming in, meeting new leaders. I think that our students are really going to be the ones that shift and change our district always. And so I look forward to the new students joining the Student Advisory Board. Thank you for the counselor presentations. I see you, I hear you. I am still in contact with my counselor from Folsom High School, and I know what an impact that you guys have on students every day. So thank you, and thank you for your presentation. And then I would just want to leave by saying that I really hope that we continue to look towards the future. And I guess I have an insight into things that some people don't in terms of how a district functions, and proposing an entire second district is not a small economic task that I feel would have a positive impact on our students. And so at the end of the day, that's who I will always look at and what those impacts will have. So that's it.
Thank you. Board Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to recognize Ashwin, and I don't think he's here, from Vex IQ robotics team. You know, back in February, they had a competition out in El Dorado Hills. Well, I am happy to announce that 3 of their students from Sutter Middle School are advancing to the World Championships in Dallas. So let's wish them luck on that. Like I said, it's a great program. That's something that I hope in the future we invest in, especially in our Rancho Cordova schools, especially for our socioeconomically disadvantaged kids to be a part of that. I want to give kudos to Cordova High and their ASB and Mr. Krieger. Last week I had the opportunity to go to the special ed prom, and it was a lot of fun. You guys were amazing interacting with the students. They were dancing, music, photo booth. The families were there supporting them. It was just, it felt good to really see those kids have fun. So Jean and I actually had a great time there. I want to thank Dr. Peace for her work with the FCL art project, and securing those donations to make sure that those kids have something for their work. Had a good time last night at the CAC art show. Like I said, the art is phenomenal, and I know that only part of it is out here. But for those who missed it, you missed a good show. I mean, I think it was double the size of last year. I had visits to Natoma Station, Carlston, Sundial, Williamson, Walnut Wood, Riverview STEM, and Cordova, as well as Mitchell. And I'm just going to say this. If a board member visits and there are something about the heat that hasn't been on for 4 months, that's disturbing to me, especially if I'm there on campus. And I mean, yeah, they may or may not know I'm there, but emails work, phone calls work. You know, we have Dr. Hoover, we have our superintendent. My God, folks, I mean, tell somebody. I mean, having no heat for 4 months is ridiculous. Having no air for 4 months is ridiculous. So, gotta say something. Just don't bring it to a board meeting and say, well, we haven't had it. Well, I'm gonna say I didn't know, and I was on campus. So, you know, please email somebody so we can get that information to our superintendent so we can get it taken care of. I am looking forward to Puff this weekend and Mean Girls next Wednesday. So look forward to that. And that's all that I have.
Thank you. Board Member Lorette.
Yeah, wanted to congratulate all the art winners, and it was so cute to see their adorable little faces with their certificates. They were so proud, and I'm so proud of them and all their hard work for everybody who participated in it, and wanted to thank Dr. Peace and the MAC for all of their hard work on this, and wanted to thank Mr. Adams and all the work that he does at Mills Middle School. Since we've had Mr. Adams, so I've just seen so much more engagement from students in the music department there, and you know, when you see joint performances, the joy that all students from both Mitchell and Mills and Cordova have when he is there, he really is an example of a teacher that makes you want to be there and makes you want to learn, and he's just amazing. So went to Mitchell's music festival last week, and they got an excellent, so congratulations to them down at Davis High School, and wanted to wish Board Member Perez in her competition tomorrow, so good luck to you. And we went to the boys soccer banquet last week at Cordova High School, and we actually had it at the Grange, and it was an amazing event. We had so many parents there. We filled the entire room, and they were just really excited because it was the first time they've really had a banquet since the pandemic. So it was nice to see all the parents out there and their families and their friends, and we got out of the gym into a nice place where we were able to cater for them and really give them their dues for their hard work for this season. So, and then just regarding the heat, they actually did tell the district was aware of it. It's just that the boiler was on back order. So, but I think the issue still comes down to that we have a lot of facility issues in Cordova schools. We have aging schools that, because of some of our bonds, we're not able to really address a lot of those hard needs. So, you know, I think that the district is aware, but, you know, I think that there is, you know, there was a lot of parents who were pretty upset about not having heat. So, and I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Board Member Hui.
Thank you. Yeah, just a few quick things tonight. I guess first I just want to say, we brought up tonight, we were talking about a fairly divisive issue, or at least has the potential to be. I know at least in my short so far tenure on this board that we've had no shortage of divisive issues. I just want to point out that I really appreciated the tenor of the conversation tonight. I hopefully people did feel heard. It felt markedly different than many of the other discussions that we've had up on this board. So just a way of saying thank you for entering into that, and hopefully that's something we can continue. Two other quick things. I was hanging out just for the minutes that I had before the board meeting tonight at our middle school track meet up at Vista del Lago today. It's really fun to see all of our middle schools, all combined, hundreds of kids out on that track, well, at least on the field, waiting to run. You know, they think this is the first year that we've done that, where we've combined as a district and run together, and looking forward to more of those. And finally, just want to wish happy Ramadan to all those that are participating and celebrating.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking the Sons of the American Revolution, the Sacramento chapter, for the posting of the colors this evening. I wasn't sure if the individual who presented us with our coins could be picked up on the speaker or not, but the coins that they provided each board member is in honor of the upcoming 250th anniversary of the United States of America, which will be occurring in 2026. So that was very kind of them. And it's been a very busy month and a half. I actually decided to give each of the board members just a quick memo of everything that I've been doing school-related in the past month and a half. It's really, it would take too long to go through all of those items. So I thought that would just be an easier way to communicate with the board. And, but there is one thing that I do want to pull out of that memo, which is myself and district staff toured an interesting school. It was a Gold River Discovery Center. It's a school within the San Juan Unified School District, which is over in Gold River. And the reason why we toured it is because it was a K-8. And we don't have a K-8 in our district, but the San Juan Unified School District has 4 K-8s. So we kind of wanted to tour the facility, chat with the principal, chat with the leaders, and chat with the teachers to get a sense of the pros and cons of having a K-8. I imagine that staff will probably be looking at the K-8 model. I hope they will. I think it was very interesting. And one of the insights that came from leadership over at the Discovery Center was that the students who were in the middle school years, they observed that they tend to have a little bit better behavior, decorum, language, because they know that they have kindergarteners and first and second graders, and they take that responsibility very seriously of being the older students on the campus. So I thought that was an interesting insight. Also, the ability to have buddy programs, where right now, if one of our elementary schools, and I know they do exist, have buddy programs with a middle school, they have to be transported between the two schools. So obviously there are benefits there. Not to suggest there aren't cons to it as well, but I think having a diversity of school type could be beneficial to Folsom Cordova Unified School District. So I would encourage staff to look into that a little bit more. So those are my comments for this evening. That takes us to item 16, advanced planning. We have the next school board meeting is on April 20th. We have the 12-month calendar for your review, and we have the suggested future agenda items. And that list actually seems to be getting shorter, so I congratulate staff on that. Is there anything addition that the board would like to add to the requested future agenda items? Board Member Clark?
Well, I'm still waiting on my project 1300, but I know it's in the works, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hearing no other requests, that takes us, actually, we can skip over all of the closed session items because we addressed all of our closed session issues in our first closed session. So that takes us to adjournment. So we will adjourn by unanimous consent unless there's an objection. Any objection? All right, we're adjourned.